Do you have something to say, David? Do you have something funny to
No,
say?
man. I don't. I just have a question for Mike.
Yeah, like you
That's
have
it.
like some smirk on your face. I know like something's coming. I can just tell.
No, you
What
can,
what
dude. Like
funny
you're
thing do
just,
you
you
have to
know what?
say?
You're starting to get a little bit defensive is what I feel. You're starting to get a little defensive. You're starting to feel like somebody's gonna make fun of you. And I, for one, am here to defend your honor, Stu. Like that is,
Yeah.
I feel like that's a role to defend your honor. Like any big brother would do to a sweet little baby brother,
Mm.
a little tiny baby brother. Like that's how I feel, is I
Mike,
want to
in
protect
your
you.
experience of engagement with David and I, do you feel like that's the total truth coming from David?
100% no.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. The dude is focused on nothing more than his own calves,
Mhm.
and everything else is secondary. And
That's actually
it's
what I was gonna ask, Mike. That was my first question. When I said I had a question for Mike, I was gonna ask you, are your calves still sore? Because I thought that was awesome that you put that out in the group, and I appreciate your vulnerability and honesty, which I think is what makes you an amazing kinetic man.
yeah. Apparently, I'm vulnerable, but I'm not hardcore enough to walk up red rocks without having sore calves for a week. So yeah, we're on day 6 now. I'm able to walk down the stairs without any ancillary noises. So we're making progress.
Nice.
Ancillary noises,
Ancillary noises. I like it.
some moans and some groans.
Hey man, I
Oh,
was
a
just
lot.
glad to we're about to our audience is about to get a taste of who you are and your history. But it's interesting because you and I had spoken a number of times. We'd communicated via different mediums, and I felt like I knew you. But and it's crazy in this digital age that we live in how you can get to know somebody and then and not meet. And so that was a special, in all honesty, it was a special day for me. I was very excited about you committing to the Red Rocks climb because I was like, I finally get to hug this dude, and I was not disappointed. Although I will say, man, it is always this way. People are always, and maybe I need to reflect on what this means about me. Maybe I'm shorter than I think I am. I'm shorter than I believe that I come across because everybody I meet like you, I'm like, man, he's a tall dude, like he's a bigger guy than I thought. That's how I always feel. I'm always like, man, these guys are bigger than I thought. So you were bigger, more handsome, and it was amazing hug time.
My man, my man. Yeah, likewise. I've never had a challenge with the vertical side of things. I've always had a challenge with the width side of things. I've always been, skinny kid. So I'm just taking bigger as an all encompassing, just, like, man, Mike was a lot more muscular and large
Mike's
than I was
shoulders were
anticipating.
way more broad than his
This
voice
guy gets,
betrayed.
yes, this guy. Hey, wait, hey, let's not say things we can't take back. All right.
See, David, I got the opposite when your old buddy from work came and he saw me for the first time. He was like, "Oh, I thought you were taller than you are in person." I was like, "Oh, is that a compliment or not so much?"
Means you have a big voice, dude. People think you have a big
That's right.
voice.
That's right.
Yeah,
I have a
yeah,
big voice.
yeah.
Big voice.
Your influence outsizes your body.
Hey, well, let's get into it. Mike, appreciate you coming on the podcast, man. We had some great conversation while we were walking around Red Rocks doing the 9/11 stair climb, and you've been a part of the Kinetic Man for a little bit now. And you're in my hometown. You're in Parker, Colorado, and so yeah, let's get into it. Can you, if you for our audience, just give a little background about who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So Mike Carvill, born and raised in Colorado, one of the few remaining OG Coloradans here, which is a
There's not
badge of
many of
honor
them.
for us. No, it's yeah, you guys have invaded. Yeah, born and raised and never left. So yeah, I grew up down here on the south end of Denver. Toiled around high school, went to Colorado State. Just solidly mediocre across the board in all of my endeavors. Just played hockey in high school, just solidly mediocre.
You should be proud. You should be proud of that.
I'm consistent, and
There you
there
go.
is there is something to be said about being consistent. My whole dream growing up was to fly helicopters in the Army. That's all I ever wanted to do. So I went and did ROTC at Colorado State. Had asthma as a kid, and the United States Army said thanks, but no thanks. So my plan all along was to go fly helicopters and then go be a police officer. So I just skipped the whole flying helicopters piece of the puzzle and got a degree in criminal justice, which 10 out of 10 do not recommend. Study something that translates into some bigger horizons. But yeah, I spent about 10 years as a police officer here in the Metro Denver area. Majority of my time up with Broomfield PD, and then finished out my career down here with Douglas County Sheriff. And been out of law enforcement for a little while now, and have transitioned into more of a security consulting role, kind of helping people unpack all things physical security, whether it's active shooter response, how do you secure your buildings with cameras, door hardware, that kind of stuff. And yeah, helping people unpack, how to keep their buildings, their people, their population safe. And yeah, married. I got two beautiful little girls. God has a sense of humor, and so I got a lot of tea parties and princess activities here in this household. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. My family is my pride and joy, and I'm a very lucky and blessed man that I get to live the life I live.
But it's funny when you said very mediocre across the board. It struck me because I know you more than that, and what's interesting is I was talking to some dads about this the other day as well. This idea that a lot of kids, and not even kids, like folks, desire this crazy extravagant, like meaningful from the perspective of I'm an influencer, I got a lot of followers, and people want to be like me because of the tiki talkies and the faces, the book of faces, and all the things. But recently, probably within the last year, I've been exposed to a number of folks that are high level thinkers, high level individuals. Jordan Grummett being one of them, talking about big P versus little P purpose, and the idea of normal, and how normal or mediocre, quote unquote mediocre, is really a place where you can and have an outsized impact. And it's more likely that you're going to have an outsized impact in normal than it is you're going to be some YouTube superstar with a ton of followers, that people watch you play video games and crazy stupid stuff like that. And so it's interesting to me that you said that, and then you highlight your family, because that's where we see huge impact. That's where I see with you specifically, and we talked about this on the walk. I was like, man, it's crazy when I go to church, like it is almost necessarily, but it's there's so much security, there's so much presence, there's so much protection. And we started diving into that, and just the idea of how you make a huge impact, how that is in and of itself as a ministry to protect folks to do the things that we value in this country. So I say all that to say, one, I think it's beautiful in your normalcy, and obviously you're playing it up and being a little bit humble about it, but there's so many lives that are impacted through exactly what you're doing, right? And there's another dude that we J Balls, John Ballinger, someone that we love. The connection with you was through him, if I believe, and you guys have impacted me in a serious way, because you've challenged me to think about things that a lot of people don't want to think about, but um, it also forces you to contextualize your time that you currently have with your family. And if you don't mind talking about just that connection and how we all connected, because I think it's an important part, it's a huge part of your story, but it's also been something that has influenced me way more than you or John even recognize, and how much time I have dedicated to thinking about my family and the impact I'm making, and the time that I have with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it's, the thing I've realized, and one of the biggest reasons I was drawn to the Kinetic Man is through somebody like a John Ballinger, where, we share a very similar terrible part of our lives. We've both lost a child. Um, and I just when so we lost my daughter in December of 2017. So 7 years ago, and I've floated through the last 7 years of my life. Just, it's nothing seemed to really matter. Nothing seemed to, the things that were important to me before, making money, an important job, all that kind of stuff. It's like, dude, none of this matters. And going through what my wife and I and my older daughter went through, it flipped everything on its head. And as a man of faith, we'll kind of unpack this in a more of a decade level. I grew up a very easy life. My parents are amazing. They love each other. They love me. I grew up in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, like pretty vanilla, like never had any problems. And then got into law enforcement. I was like, whoa, there's this whole other side of the world here that sucks, and it's scary, and it's dark, and it's something that, for an idealist like me, I was like, I'm gonna fix it. And there's so much stuff outside of my realm of control that I can't touch. And you take this back to 2012, I watched a 2-year-old little girl die right in front of me on duty. And there was just this series of cascading events where it's like, wow, I'm not okay. And then something else would happen. It's like, I'm even more not okay. And I just pushed through that until that same type of a feeling hit my household with the loss of my daughter. And that's when I was like, all right, these last 5 years that I referenced of just kind of floating through life, it's the culmination of those last 12 years at this point of life as I thought I knew it is now completely different, and it's lost its luster, it's lost its shine, it's lost its hope. And all of those things that I thought were my check boxes to being a good man, a good husband, a good father, they don't care. My wife doesn't care how much money I make when we just lost our baby. Like, she's like, are you able and willing and capable of taking care of our family and guiding us through this season of life? And I had to look myself in the mirror and be like, no, I'm not. I mean, by the grace of God, we got through it. But looking back in hindsight, I was a wreck, man. I was a disaster. And I was anxious all the time. I was angry all the time. I was sad all the time. Dude, like a Tide commercial would catch me the right way, and I'd cry for like an hour, man. Like, I was like, all right, bro, like, I need to get my act together. And to circle back to answer your question, that's kind of a long-winded answer, but the context is important. Then I met somebody like John Ballinger. Just literally, I saw his post on LinkedIn. His assignment was to post a fake eulogy that he wrote himself. And I read that and it just wrecked me. So I was like, who is this dude? Like, Marine One pilot. And then he like posts this kind of content. So I go to his profile, I look through his previous posts, and I read his post about him losing his daughter. And I was like, I got to get to know this guy. So I sent him a quick message and I said, hey man, if you're ever in Denver, I would love to buy you a beer, a cup of coffee, and just see how you have this hope that I can't find. And we share the same faith. We share very similar circumstances, but why are you over here and I'm over here? And he's like, bro, I live in Colorado Springs. And, we ended up sitting down, having coffee here in Parker. And it's pretty special when you meet another dude, especially somebody with like credentials like John, where it's like, this guy is like the elite of the elite when it comes to flying helicopters. Like, there's not many people cooler than him. And we're both sobbing together 2 minutes after we meet. And some people might say that's weird. But I'm here to tell you that's not weird. It's normal and it's awesome because it brought me the healing that I was desperate for. Understanding and the healing that I was desperate for is the reconciliation that this can suck and wreck me forever, but I can move on and I can make beauty out of those ashes. And I had said that for a long time. Our youngest daughter, who was born after we lost Abby, her name is Remy. And Remy means, in kind of old English slang, redemption. And I have this perfect example of redemption right in front of me, but I'm spending so much time over here focusing on what is terrible and scary and what could possibly go wrong every minute of every day that I'm ignoring this redemption and this beautiful gift that I have in my youngest daughter. And, John and I talked for 2.5 hours, and I walked away from that meeting a changed man. And what a gift that is for a social media connection to help me pull myself out of this dark season of life that I had just turned into my normal. And he's like, he posted his little introduction on, about me on LinkedIn, and then, boom, you guys start commenting on it, and all these other dudes are coming out of the woodwork. And long story short, it helped me realize just my desperate need for community and for people who are willing to go above and beyond what society says is required of a man. And yeah, getting to know you guys, getting to know the group, it's helped me realize, like, the joke I made about being mediocre. I'm a mediocre dude and I'm totally okay with that, but I'm mediocre in the areas that society says are important. I'm pretty darn special and important in the areas that God says are important. And that's where I need to focus my attention and my energy and my devotion. Work is important. We're called to work, and we're called to work as if we're working for the Lord. And that's a shift in perspective. But my priorities need to be over here with my wife, my 2 little girls, and how I shepherd my family in the midst of this chaos. And that's what I'm most proud of. No idea if I answered your question properly here, but
Dude,
that's what I'm most proud of.
that was a better answer than I could have anticipated. I want to, before you guys ask your questions, Stu, I want to highlight a couple things. One, it, it was, I thought it was hilarious. So the eulogy is something in the Kinetic Man that we took it from a group that we were in, and we integrated it into our group in a way to help us to really define and refine if our life is even reflective of what we want it to be and if we're on the right path. And that post cracked me up because so many people, because we're in this age of like, let me just get the highlight, and a lot of people did that. So they thought John died. So like, it was like his most viral post. I don't want to say it's his most viral post, but it was a highly responded to and reacted to post because people were like, dude, John's dead. And he wasn't dead. It was just part of the assignment, which I found to be hilarious. But the fact that you guys connected through that, and one thing you said too, that some people think it's weird, we talk about this in the group all the time. It is weird, dude. It is weird in the context of the society that we live in, and I love it. I love that we are weirdly, strangely, crazily weird as a group of dudes. And my prayer is that more dudes will become weird like that, because you highlighted, when you allow yourself to do that, there's healing in that. There's healing, and we were never intended to do this stuff alone, especially the hardest stuff, right? And so I love how you embraced that, and you found a dude that, because none of our tragedies, as bad as they are, they're also not unique to us. They're not unique to us. And when you can find somebody, when you're vulnerable enough to be like, hey, this happened to me, and you put it out, and someone else can be like, oh, dude, like that's me. Like let's connect and talk. Then God is allowed in to work miracles, right? And I didn't realize that was the first time I had heard you talk about just kind of floating for a period of time in that sorrow. And then a meeting could change that entire thing, because one dude is vulnerable enough to post his death online and somebody else is vulnerable enough to say, dude, can we meet? And so I love that, man. It's such a special thing. And also I want to highlight, man, I've never heard it put that way, but mediocre in the ways of the world, but extraordinary in the ways of God. Like, dude, as a Christian man, that's what I desire. I don't desire the world to say, job well done, my good and faithful servant. Like, if the world says that to me, I'm brokenhearted. But if God says it, man, what an amazing accomplishment. So I appreciate you sharing that. That was you answered that question more beautifully than I could have even teed it up for you.
Awesome.
I was looking for this quote I have saved in my phone from John Mark Comer. I listen to a lot of his stuff, read his books, and he says, extraordinary things happen with ordinary relationships.
Mm.
And I think that puts it really well, what you kind of just described. I'm curious, what do you tell somebody who is going through, who has gone through, is going through this struggle, this challenge, this life slap across the face that happens to them, like losing a child and experiencing this period of time where you're just like going through the motions? Like, how do you tell somebody to get out of that?
Yeah, so I got kind of like a biblical faith-based answer, and then I've got a world, just a non-biblical answer.
Okay.
But I've always loved the book of Romans. Romans has always been a place I go when I was getting into law enforcement. The whole book about they do not bear the sword for nothing. I was like, heck yeah, that's awesome. But the verse that I'm referring to here specifically is, and I'm going to deliberately misquote it here. One of the biggest Bible verses that gets shared when somebody's going through a hard thing is like, hey man, all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord. And I was like, yeah, that's
Romans 8:28.
beautiful. Yeah, exactly. And it's beautiful. And I use that all the time too. People send it to me. I was like, man, that's beautiful. And then one day my dad was like, go back and read that verse. Go get your Bible and read the verse. And what does it say? And it's, in all things, God works for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. Two biggest differences that I want to highlight there are together. There's some translations that do have together in there, but the NIV and some of the more modern translations, there is no together. All things do not work together for the good of those who love the Lord. It's in all things, God works for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. We deliberately and conveniently leave out that last part too of, who love him and are called according to his purpose. And we just focus on that middle piece because it makes us feel good. And what I would say to people is that even in the midst of my darkest days and in watching the little girl and holding her as she died back when I was a police officer, I've never prayed more fervently and more hard for God to show up than I did that day. And he didn't show up. And when I lost Abby, I've never prayed more fervently and harder for God to show up. And he didn't. But what he did do is he showed up in his way, and not in my way, not in my desires. And I learned hindsight is beautiful. It's easier. I mean, clearly it still sucks because, there's a lump in my throat and my heart's forever broken, 7 years and 12 years, removed respectively. But in all things, God works for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And I was trying to put this puzzle piece together of like, well, this sucks, and this sucks, and this sucks. And I'm trying to make this puzzle piece and look for God's beauty in that, rather than just looking for God's beauty in the midst of my chaos. I was trying to string everything together. And the perfect example of that answered prayer comes in the form of Remy, my 5-year-old. She would not exist had God answered my prayers the way I asked him to back in December of 2017. Remy wouldn't exist. And you guys don't know Remy yet, but she's going to change the world. Like, this little girl, she's special. And back to that, that dichotomy that I mentioned earlier, it can suck forever that I lost Abby, but it's also beautiful that I have Remy. And Remy would not exist without what had happened over here. And learning to trust God's sovereignty and God's plan in that big picture mentality, it's changed the way that I view life. I mean, as evidenced by my emotions now, it still sucks. And I have a lot of questions for him when I see him on the other side of this life. A lot of questions. But I can rest in his promise that in all things, God works for the good of those who love the Lord. And that's beautiful. All right, I'll stop crying and I'll move on to the world side. Is he
Stop
just
crying.
have
You're
to
gonna make me cry too.
I'm an
Stop
emotional dude. My apologies. You have to just survive, and you have to take it one day at a time. And I met a wonderful friend at church. He showed up on Good Friday, had no idea, hadn't been to church in 15, 20 years, but showed up because his son was having these incredible headaches. And the doctor's like, you need to prepare yourself for the fact that your son has a brain tumor. We've seen some things on the scans and they're not good. So I'm just working security at church. And this dude comes in halfway through the service, just a wreck. And all the pastors are gone and it's just me. And they're like, hey, yeah, go talk to Mike. He works for the church. I was like, oh, crap. And we sat down and we had a beautiful conversation. And I was able to walk him through, hey, dude, this is the stuff that I did that I wish I would change. And here's the stuff I did that I'm really glad I did. And the advice that I gave him was work the problem that's in front of you. This dude is a paramedic. He's a solid, squared away dude, just like me, who thinks he can control everything in his sphere of influence. And all of a sudden, he gets slapped across the face with something like this that you can't control. And I'm like, bro, work the problem in front of you. Don't worry about next Wednesday's scan. That will take care of itself next Wednesday. You need to be there for your family, and you need to focus on what you can control right now in front of you. And that would be my advice to everybody: is one, don't go on the internet and Google stuff. That'll ruin you. And two, work the problem in front of you. There was a Navy SEAL on a podcast I don't know if it was a Jocko podcast or one of the other ones, but he just talked about how they were doing free climbing outside of Las Vegas. And this one dude is terrified, keeps looking down, keeps looking up. He's looking all over himself. And the guy next to him is like, brother, if you can't reach it with your hands or your feet, don't worry about it, because the stuff that you can reach with your hands and your feet right now, that's the stuff that's going to keep you alive. Stuff that's 15, 20 yards above us, that's its own problem that we're going to get to when we get to it. You need to focus on what you can control right in front of you. Yeah. And both of those lessons are a daily battle. It's like I have to recenter myself a lot of times because you get spun up, and it's like, no, man, is this in my sphere of control right now? Cool. If so, I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to work that problem. If not, I'm going to push it down, and I'm going to get to it when I get to it, or when it presents itself, then I'll be ready for it.
Man, that's deep. You know, as I think about your words, so there's so many things, so much to unpack there, and I'm going to go back and listen to that a couple times just to, to wrap my head around the application, what that means for life, right? And some immediate things that pop up. When you talk about, for some reason, Jeremiah 29:11 popped in my mind, and then, there's a verse a couple verses that, excuse me, that I read every day, and it's 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18. And I'm trying to wrap my head around. So, for those that are not familiar with Jeremiah 29:11, it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you a hope in a future." And it's interesting when we look at those things and we try to play God, we try to put ourselves in God, like we understand what that means, right? And sometimes God blesses us, and you highlight this. Sometimes God blesses us in ways that we can't even fathom, right? You can't even imagine the way that God's going to bless you, but He has a plan that's going to be good from His perspective, from His context. And it may not look amazing to me, and it may not look amazing to you, and it may not look amazing to anybody, but then you see how these things evolve. And so I love how you frame the way that we read the Bible and how we should read the Bible, right? And what faith truly looks like in that. And then first I read First Thessalonians, excuse me, 5:16-18 every day because I do not live it. And those verses say, "Rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." In the first part, just yesterday, I was like, my kid was sick. I was at home. Some plans had to change. I was frustrated here and there. And I read that and I was like, "Rejoice always." What does that mean? What is the Greek of that? What is the translation? Rejoice always. What does always mean? Well, it means always. Rejoice always. It tells you to always rejoice, regardless of the situation. And it's really, really hard. I mean, it requires a different perspective and a different perspective. But like, even like you said, if you're rejoicing always and you're in the moment and your hand is on this spot, you can rejoice and be grateful in that moment that you have your hand on this spot. And it just is it's a very challenging, interesting way. And it's, part of my prayers is, God, don't make me have to learn through great tragedy what you're trying to tell me. And it's just a very challenging way. So you, John, and then I'll take one other guy, all lost children, Rick Warren. Some of the stuff that I love most about uh his messages and the way he preaches is his son, his adult child, died by suicide. And that was a lifetime of bipolar and mental health issues or whatever he had that culminated in that event. But the way he responded to it, man, these are challenges of faith. And with you and John, I tell you, I surround myself with dudes like you because I want to be challenged in my faith. And this is a very real way that is it's just as challenging as any 10x or investment type conference anybody's ever going to go to. If this is important to you, to be challenged by someone like you to look at the context of the Word of God and your faith and how you live it daily, man, that's a very significant thing. And I thank you for that, right? Because it's not easy and it's not pretty and it doesn't seem glorious, but this is the way that you grow. And to do that with somebody else is like jet fuel, right? I'm not going to learn these lessons to the depth that I am through a conversation with you, someone who's experienced a tragedy that I've not experienced. And there's a lot of power in that. And there's a lot of connection in that. There's a lot of community in that. And to that point, I want to change gears a little bit and talk about some of the other things that you're doing because you're a very community focused kind of guy. And you're working on things to try to build and bring people together. And why don't you talk a little bit about what you got going on with that?
Yeah. So, we realized, kind of all of this coming together, the lesson that I learned is just the importance of community and the importance of connection, and just how meaningful something as simple as a "Hey, I'm thinking about you" text or message can be. So I've been all over the world. I've worked a lot of places. I know people all over the country, all over the world. And Christmas 2 years ago, just kind of had this idea of, man, like there's a lot of sad people. And I know a lot of friends who are going through tough stuff, divorces, job loss, whatever you want to say. Like the list of people who are having some struggles is a lot higher than the list of people who are just rocking it and just like, hey, life is good right now. I was like, man, I really want to be able to share some Christmas joy with people that, man, I haven't talked to in a long time. And I want to just let them know I'm thinking about them, but I want to do it in a little way that's more meaningful than just a text message. And I was like, Christmas cards. So my wife and I started talking. We're like, hey, let's send out Christmas cards to everybody. Let's send out some hope and some truth and just some love to everybody. And then this is like kind of the tail end of COVID supply chain. So, I went into Walgreens and I was like, hey, I need 500 Christmas cards. They're like, no. My dad was running into the same issues, like couldn't get Christmas cards printed anywhere. And then we looked at, my wife and I, and she's like, well, how many addresses do you have? I was like, well, I got my mom and dad's address and that's about it. And she's like, okay, well, like you got to get on this and start like texting all these people you want to send Christmas cards to, and you need to get their address. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm 0 for 1 on trying to get 500 cards from Walgreens, and now I'm 0 for 2 because I really don't want to text 200 people that, hey, what's your address? Hey, I haven't talked to you in 10 years. I care about you. What's your address? So out of all of that, this idea for an app was born, and the app is called Pictacto, and the notion is that, hey, there's a lot of people we care about, but there's a lot of barriers to sending them holiday joy. So the idea was born of like, let's send a digital holiday card, digital Christmas card via text message. Nothing against the e-card business or anything like that. I get one from a family member every year, and it's awesome that they think of me, but things get lost in email. And it's just kind of one of those things. I'll get to that later. A text message, for most of us normal people who don't leave people on red all the time, like it's addressed right there in the moment. So we wanted to capitalize on that. I've got phone numbers for people. I can deliver this card to them just via a phone number and let them know I'm thinking of them, wish them a Merry Christmas, wish them a happy holidays, like, and I can say that I love you in a customizable way that I can blast out for a fraction of the cost. Don't have to lick any stamps, and I can get it to people all over the world instantaneously. So that's where the idea was born from. And thankfully, I know some really smart people who know how to do the stuff with the computers and make it all work. I'm just the pretty face and the idea man. And it's
I don't know
been
pretty face. I don't.
that joke. It was awesome. So we did it last year. I think we had like 400 unique users with no marketing. The app wasn't ready last year. It just wasn't pretty enough, wasn't good enough. So we were a little late to the party, but this year it's freaking beautiful and it's awesome. And the coolest part about getting this out there is, I just sent out my Christmas cards to everybody. And then I started getting Pictacto cards back from people that didn't even know that I was the one who started the company. I was like, all right, we might be onto something here. So we spent this entire year building up the ability to do birthday cards, invitations with RSVP capabilities, save the dates, and even obituaries. My cousin passed away last December on the day we were in Minnesota for his funeral, on the day that we launched the app. And his younger brother, my other cousin, was like, dude, what a blessing this would have been for me to just create something that had a beautiful picture of Brian, all of the details for the service, all of the details for the online, the comment wall and all that stuff. He's like, I could have saved so much time and so much heartache by just creating this and sending it out to everybody. And in that moment, we realize, all right, like this is not a one time I'm just sending you a birthday card, because the card comes in your text message window. So in your normal conversation, it'll just pop up with a link to the Pictacto card that I've created for Stu's birthday. And Stu can open it up, check it out. It's saved forever in your app for free. And then that conversation, we're right there. And Stu can be like, Mike, dude, this is awesome. Thank you so much for remembering my birthday. how are you doing? How's the wife and kids? And that conversation kicks off from right there. And that was the most beautiful realization. And as we pushed into Christmas last year, after talking with my cousin, like that was the piece of the puzzle that I really focused on, was that connection. I mean, I had 15, 20 conversations with people I literally have not talked to in 10 plus years, but at a point in my life, they were very special to me. And I wanted to remind them of that. And like, man, like, oh, wow, you have kids now? Like, that's crazy. Like, you're not on social media. I had no idea. What are you doing for work now? And oh, you're going to be in Denver in February? Like, let's get lunch. And that's that piece of the puzzle of course, yeah, we need to make money to make this be a, a legitimate ongoing thing. But if we can, so our slogan, our motto is joy to your world. Like, we are a mechanism for you to deliver joy to your world. If we can do that in a tangible way where all of a sudden, that guy maybe sitting at home by himself on Christmas morning that doesn't have a family and doesn't hear from a whole lot of friends, he gets a Christmas card from you and it spurs a conversation and reminds that person that he is seen and he is valued and he is loved. Like, not to get all idealistic cop on you again, but like, that's how we change the world. And so yeah, I'm fired up about it. It's something that I really think is, we've taken the idea that we executed mediocrely last year and we've now made it excellent. And I am fired up to see where it goes and just what level of connection it could bring, and hopefully repair some relationships, reunite some relationships. And the quote that I used last year is, maybe it can spark that flame of connection that's been dormant for far too long. So that's the vision of Pictacto.
Dude, so many reasons that you listed of why I have never done Christmas cards. Like literally, my wife's like, let's do Christmas cards this year. Like, oh, I don't, just like you said, I don't have anybody's address. I don't want to take pictures. Like, I don't want to send it out in the mail, all the stamps, all the letters, all the things. Like it sounded
Man, you just
awful to
sound
me.
like a Grinch right now, dude.
I mean,
Jeez,
he's got a really
man.
good point of all the reasons why not to send cards, but
Just saying.
also to your point. So we've started in the Kinetic Man this Thankful Thursday, and we got it from a friend of ours, Brandon Jones, who spoke at one of our retreats. And I have found that the simple exercise of sending a text message to somebody every Thursday that just says, "Hey man, I'm thinking about you. I hope you're doing well. I love you. I'm grateful for you. Thanks for being my friend. You're on my brain today." That has been so impactful for me, but also for the individual that received it. And it's on my calendar every Thursday, Thankful Thursday. I send a text message. I actually do it more now because I just get a lot of joy out of it.
Yeah.
But I'm pulling up this text message from a friend of ours that's in the Kinetic Man that I'd done that to. And it took him a few days to respond, but he finally responded and said, "Thank you so much for your message. It came at a really good time. I really needed it. There's been a lot going on in life and some are not so good, but I'm just looking for a path that God has for me. Thank you so much. I love you." Simple text message, man. Change that dude's day.
Mhm.
How easy is that to do? And then I'm thinking through like this tic-tac-toe thing. How easy would it be to do just to like put a little picture, make it a little pretty, right?
and,
With your
and that's the
kids.
that's the be like the part that is so fun. So one of my best friend's birthday was yesterday, and I have an iPhone, and in the iPhone, like, I have every picture I've ever taken since I graduated high school. And
Yeah.
with this new like facial recognition thing, like, I can name people in pictures and go back and find all of the pictures of that person. I spent an hour and a half yesterday putting this birthday card together for my buddy Danny, from pictures. He was my freshman roommate in college, like going way back and like telling the story of our friendship and how grateful I am for him. And to your point, like, I got so much joy out of that because I was reminiscing about all these wonderful times. And then, to get a message back from him that says, dude, that is far and away the most impactful, amazing birthday card I have ever gotten. I was like, cool, like, CEO hat of Pictacto, like, that's awesome. But
Yeah.
more importantly, as a friend hat, like, dude, you deserve to know how special you are. And if I can have this mechanism to deliver that message to you that lands, that reminds you of how important you are to me and how much fun we've had together, and just like how special that friendship that's spanned over 20 years now, like that's the piece of the puzzle that I get excited about.
Back to that quote. Extraordinary things happen through ordinary relationships. Dude, I love it, man. I'm I'm excited to like start sending text messages to everybody with Pictacto.
My man.
Super cool. Super cool. David, you might get a text message from me every now and
Here's the thing. Does it have a blocking function?
then.
Hey, it's delivered as a text message from their phone number. So if you need to mute Stu, Tic-Tac-Toe won't get through either.
Yeah. Yeah. It may be challenging for him to get me a card. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know. I don't know why. I just think it's going to be challenging for him to get me a special card. No, dude. Hey, I love it. This has been an awesome conversation, dude. Very challenging in a lot of ways, and also even with the Pictacto, right? It's another level of how intentional of a friend do you want to be? How intentional of a person do you want to be, right? How much how much impact do you want to have on a daily basis, and are you willing to own that? And there's so many tools today that, beyond the 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 social media and the stuff that is so, to me, is so anti true connection. And it's this, hey man, like, I'm thinking about you, and here's a picture of us back when we were, years ago. You're special. You are special. And I'll tell you, we talk about it all the time, the Kinetic Man. You're creating an app that enables this conversation that we have all the time. Is you have so much power. Each of us as individuals have so much power to impact somebody's life in a positive way. And we don't even recognize, we typically don't recognize, because we live in negativity and we don't think people look at us this way, but we don't recognize how much power we have to make somebody else's day better. Right. And you're creating an app. It's one more reason and one less excuse and one more resource on how to do that and how to be that person. And dude, I love it, man. I love it. I can't wait to. I'm not a huge, like, this kind of stuff doesn't typically get me fired up. I can't wait to get on this app, dude. I can't wait to get in Pictacto and start, because it's a mechanism to help you help people to feel better, help people to realize how special they are to you. And I love it. I love it. You're onto something special, dude. I love that you're in the Kinetic Man. I love that you challenge me to be better. I love that you challenge me to be a better man of faith, be a better dad, and to be a better human. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for the opportunity, to share my story and to share about Pictacto. I do want to bring it back to when with my daughter Abby. I just want to correct one thing that I said, where I said God did not show up. God very much so did show up. What I meant to say is He didn't answer my prayers the way that I wanted them to be answered. But when I cried out to God, I felt the presence of the Lord just envelop me, and heard, not audibly, but just heard in my heart, it's okay. And I've gone back to that moment, I mean, daily for the last 7 years. And my encouragement to everybody, and just kind of taking this full circle, is just lean into those hard moments, man. Lean into whatever is in front of you, and don't let it break you, because there are people that love you, that care about you, and are depending on you. And getting into a group like this, and just being able to be surrounded by men who are intentional in a way that the world is so desperate for. It's just made me realize that, hey, I can use my story for good, and I can use my mediocrity for good. God has made me an emotional, connection driven man for a reason. And for so long, I've ran from that, because it wasn't what I thought a warrior should look like. And I spent time, you guys have spent time as warriors in our nation's armed forces. I spent time as a warrior for my community here. But that chapter of my life has closed. And as important as that was, the most important role that I will ever have is to be a warrior for my family, and a warrior for the truth. And thank you guys for putting your money where your mouth is, and for creating this group where this is the most important calling that a man can have, is to lead his family and lead it well. And someone was asking me the other day, what is the Kinetic Man? And it's like, man, I don't remember the exact like script on the website, but it's redefining what's a successful man is to look like. And all of that floating season of life, I'm so grateful it's behind me because I know my mission now and I know my calling. And Pictacto is super important. I'm fired up about it. My other job, security, is super important, but I only get this short season of life to be the dad that my daughters deserve. And if I'm not pouring all my time and energy into that first and foremost, I'm wrong. And I am far from perfect. I'm a moron. I screw up all the time, but because of groups like this and just finding those people that get it, it brings me back and it allows me to reset and push forward the way that I need to a lot quicker than it has in the past. So
Love
super
that,
pumped
dude.
to be here, guys. Yeah, thank you.
Love that. And if it makes you feel better, Stu also is a moron.
I knew that was coming.
I like Stu.
I like you too, Mike. Maybe we'll become best friends.
Yeah, keep looking.
I'll be
Uh,
nicer. I'll be nicer.
yeah, seriously, I need a best friend who's nice to me. So I make fun of me all the time. Mike, where do we tell people to get Pictacto? How do you spell that? Where do we get it? All
Yeah,
that information.
Pictacto, just like tic tac toe. That was our original motto. We kind of hated it. It's as easy as pic tac toe. Nobody understood it, so we like the joy to your world a little bit better. But yeah, Pictacto. It's in both the Apple App Store and the Google App Store. Our new version launches October 1st. It's pretty awesome. So yeah, we are on social media, kind of. So yeah, Pictacto does have an Instagram that I think gets back to me eventually. So if you want to reach out, that's probably the best way to do it. But yeah, we're fired up for what I could do.
Nice, man. We'll put that link in the show notes, and all the Kinetic Man are gonna get Pictacto and start using it immediately. So
Right on.
this is fun, man. I appreciate your time. We'll see you in an hour on our TKM call, and we'll go hang out in person and become best friends. That sound good?
Sounds perfect. I appreciate you, boys. Thank you.
Michael, it sounds much better than it really is. I'm just kidding. I love Stu dearly. I love Stu dearly. All right, man. Thank you. Love you, brother. Thank you so
Yeah, I
much.
love you guys. Thank you.
Love you too.